Is there any public comment on this item?
Do you know where the fence is going to go? You have a good idea where the fence is going to go?
Wait, here's the protocol. You do your talking, and if there's anything that is sparked in the trustees or staff's mind in response after everyone's made their comment, there may or may not be clarifications afterward.
Okay. Can the wall be razor wire? Okay, how about
okie doke. So we need a motion. Is there any more comment before we move on?
About fencing or not?
Razor wire? No, I don't.
Not razor wire, but
No.
I have to speak into it? Okay. Okay. My name is Lisa Kanan. I've been observing with increasing distress the politics of divisiveness and destruction in this community that you have had the power to quell and calm, but instead I fear have allowed to fester and build. Not that it should matter, but I'm generally not a fan of charter schools. I believe that public schools should be responsive to their communities, that healthy programs of choice exist in high-functioning districts where innovation, creativity, and parental involvement are seen as strengths and not threats, and that programs of choice are good problems to have to manage and ones that make good public schools and districts better. You resisted pleas for independent mediation when it might have enabled space for compromise, for some revenue to flow into the district, and for an outcome with more complexity than simply creating winners and losers. Now in this landscape where people are divided across the lines in a battle you've waged, good people with a very long history of dedication and commitment to improving and supporting our schools have been denigrated by innuendo and accusation. I have heard and read critique of both Katie Rice and Mary Jane Burke as being anti-public school and pro-charter, simply for encouraging people to act with civility and with perspective. I've heard David Finan's character and dedication be called into question because he's been outspoken in his belief that his staff is capable of making White Hill work for all kids. Attempts to smear Yes Foundation have included questioning the motives of Julie Quater and asserting that I, as a Yes co-founder, also co-founded the ILC. But what happened in this room 2 weeks ago at your last board meeting suggests that things have gone beyond the pale, beyond schoolyard gossip and complaint, beyond slogans and signs, and beyond cowardly anonymous newspaper jabs and posts on Nextdoor. 2 weeks ago, in public comment, a community member stood in front of you and joked about placing razor wire on a fence around the charter school. The audience laughed out loud, while those whose responsibility it is to protect all children in this community sat silent. People with grave responsibility to educate young people, not only in language and arts and math, but history, social studies, civic participation, to attend to social emotional development, and to ensure that no one is the victim of bullying or intimidation, and you stayed silent. Audience members laughed at a joke about placing kindergartners behind a razor wire fence in a board meeting, with no one recognizing the need to address what was said or the audience's response to it. An escalating discord has been allowed that has normalized objectification of a perceived enemy, demonizing and scapegoating so far now that it is acceptable behavior. We can only imagine what's being said behind closed doors within earshot of children who are learning from adult actions and adult inaction. Children who are learning through direct observation about how to negotiate and resolve difficult conflict or not, learning about how to intervene in bullying by speaking out or not, learning the difference between mob mentality and legal rights or not, and learning about mechanisms to make change and to resist in ways that do not dehumanize and demonize those whose political objectives might differ from our own or not. As the educational leaders of this district, you are obligated to take a stand that identifies to people in this room and to the community that you know what bullying looks like, whether it hides behind someone who claims that he is just joking, or whether it's an unfounded maligning of reputation, character, and motive. You're obligated to remind a group of adults that no student ever will be allowed to be the target of dehumanizing joking. Hannah Arendt made famous the concept of the banality of evil in the wake of her careful observation of the Eichmann trials. Her point was that ordinary thoughtlessness is part of a process by which individuals and bureaucrats become inured to and complicit in processes of dehumanization. In the scale of things, considering what we face in the world, there's very little at stake here in the Ross Valley. Betsy DeVos is not at the door. The Koch brothers are not at the door. We're not teaching our children in refugee camps. We're not trying to create peace between Israelis and Palestinians. We're not even faced with the challenges that districts just a couple miles down the road are facing to meet needs very diverse. We are, however, trying to raise children who will need skills to forge flexibly into a future that will require a lot more grace and skill at negotiating differences and conflict than any of us in this room have publicly demonstrated. I can only imagine that you, like I, grew up assuming that given the opportunity historically, we hope we would have been on the side of righteousness and decency when minority legal rights were challenged, even if they meant a significant disruption of the status quo and a move into an unknown and uncertain future. We hope that we would not have been standing idly by as an angry mob threatened school children, legally integrating schools in Little Rock. The power of mob rule starts simply with complicity. And I implore you as a leadership team to take an active stand against intimidation, demonizing, and dehumanizing behavior and speech. It's bad for this community, and it's bad for our kids. It undermines your ability to protect all of the community's children and your seriousness about teaching critical thinking skills, civics, history, as well as your ability to address social emotional development and your commitment to preventing school bullying. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to ask my colleagues' indulgence here. I need to speak for about 3 minutes. I am a huge advocate of kindness and dignity and respect, and not a fan of bullying at all. And given that we have just been likened to Nazi sympathizers, I feel that I will now take a stand and ask our public to monitor their own behavior. In terms of objectifying the other, I cannot think of a more offensive comparison to make. In terms of good people being degraded, I know my colleagues to be kind and filled with integrity, even in disagreement. We are all, in my experience, interested in hearing the views and opinions of the other, and none of us wish harm to any child. I believe that we do our level best at all times to be reasonable, kind, fair, and inclusive, and to have the Holocaust evoked and us cast as Nazi sympathizers, I found repellent and particularly ironic, given that the statements that were made included good people have been degraded, what happened in this room is beyond the pale, and the normalization of objectification of the other cannot be continued. And I would say I agree with all of those things. And I would ask each and all of us to monitor our own behavior, because civility and kindness cannot be legislated. They must be self-regulated. I would ask each and all of us, if we get to a point where we feel that the other is comparable to a Nazi sympathizer, perhaps a conversation should be had outside of a board meeting. Perhaps there's something that you have been misinformed about, or that you are seeing differently than I am seeing. And perhaps to come and read, even in the quietest and most civil tones, words that imply that we are damaging our public to that level might not be conducive to the very message that is trying to be conveyed. So thank you. I know we don't generally respond to public comment, and we always appreciate it. I would always rather know than not what sorts of anger and hurt exist, but that one was particularly hard for me to take, both in its vehemence and its irony. So I'm done, and thank you for your indulgence, and thank you guys so much for joining us, and very informative.
I'd like to echo those statements. We are working very hard here to try and make good decisions. And it's very hard to hear that kind of language. And I seriously thought about leaving the room.
Okay. We're not having any public comment. Yeah,
So that's nice to get the last word. That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Let's take a break.
Cool. Meeting debrief. Wow, one for the record books, boys and girls. Thank you all for your restraint and
I don't know if there's any restraint. It's not for me.
I will say, I appreciate that you spoke out and said what you said, and that it needed to be said, and so, board president, I'm glad you did that, and I know it was hard to do.
Yeah, I meant myself, I didn't mean.
No, I know.
I wonder if there needs to be follow-up with that?
Can we talk about that offline? I don't know.
Well, it's challenging and awkward to talk as a group offline because of the risk. I know it's a non-actionable item, it's not a matter of subject matter jurisdiction.
Right.
To be civil or to reach out to community members, but I don't know, is there anything anyone would like to say in our publicly noticed meeting by way of meeting debrief regarding follow-up on that item?
I don't even know what to say.
I don't think there's really, I mean, like, there's a history, I think, of thinking that you can walk here and abuse people. and so it's set up in a way that we have to just sit and listen to that abuse.
Yeah, but at some point, certain things can be said where you just can't hold your tongue.
I don't really know how to remedy that. I don't think there is a way to remedy that.
There isn't.
And so I think follow-up, I don't know how you would follow that up.
I agree. I'm not sure that there's an effective way to deal with that sort of outlier response that comes here that is constructive or engaging.
Okay.
Well, one thing we could do mechanically or organizationally is just maybe state clearly what the time limits are, and then adhere to that. Which
we've had that conversation.
I know.
If you throw down
that's a
Nazi
hard-
sympathizer, I'm
Yeah, I
not
know.
going to cut you off.
I know that's hard.
Exactly. I mean,
I know.
when those kinds of accusations are made in a public meeting like that, I think you just have to let them go.
Right.
And anyone
hard as that
can
is.
listen to the record and know what goes on in here. For someone to cherry pick a public comment made by some member of
Wasn't
the
even a
community,
public comment.
It wasn't an actual...
whatever it
It was a
was,
blur.
to cherry pick that and then to come in here and to vilify this body is disgusting.
I think Rick was talking about the length of public comment.
And
But I think you're
I think
you're
under the
making a good point
circumstances,
though, Wesley. If somebody's going in that direction, maybe you want to
just let it go. You let it go, because if you close that off,
Right, I know.
then it's consistent with whatever